Good evening, everybody, and welcome once again to the Anchor Team. I'm your host, Michael Hitchborn, and this is my, let's see, what do we call you this week? My Space Cadet, Jim Mon.
U.S. Space Force. Good to be here.
Space Force, there we go. And we'll just go ahead and start with our prayer as we do every Friday evening. In nomine Patris, et Filii, et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Ave Maria, gratia plena, Dominus tecum. Benedicta tu in mulieribus, et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Iesus.
Sancta Maria Mater Dei, ora pro nobis peccatoribus, nunc et ora mortis nostri. Amen.
Our Lady of Victory.
Pray for us.
In nomine Patris, et Filii, et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. All right, so we actually have a lot to go over this evening because we're doing another news and analysis show where we're just going to kind of go over some of the things that have been going on this week. And let me tell you, it's been a lot of downers.
Yeah,
just lots of bad news. But you know what? Bad news, and I'm going to explain this to you in the end. Lots of bad news typically means something good is around the corner. So we'll go into that at the very end. But so this evening, we're going to go over that. But before I do, I just want to give you kind of a brief update on where some of the things stand here at the Lepanto Institute. Number one, we finally have the website all ready to go for the launch of the Great Apostasy Conference. So big round of cheers there. This is going to start. We are going to go ahead and launch this thing on Monday. Definitive drop dead date. Monday, we are going live and it's going to be out there and it's going to be great. So people will be able to register for it and they'll be able to see who the speakers are and what the general lineup is and what we're going to talk about and everything else. So it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be awesome. So praise be to the Lord. It is ready to go. What else have we got going on? In fact, I just finished writing my speech for it, which I get to now record and edit and everything else. But my speech is all done. So I'm very happy about that too, which means the weight off of my mind is suddenly cleared a little bit. Happy to have that. Let's see. What else we got going on right now?
Well, they put us in YouTube prison.
Yes. So we had they didn't really put us in YouTube prison so per se. What they did is they
Not exactly
took down our video where we had a particular doctor talking about a particular censored topic that is just not allowed by the Politburo. And that particular video being removed from YouTube. Now, we are first-time offenders, you see. So you watch what you say, mister.
That's right.
We're going to have to mind our P's and Q's if we're going to maintain our channel. So we have to use certain alternate words.
Yes.
And we'll have to post a legend that shows what the old word was and what the new word will be. It'll be kind of like a secret code. So instead of that word for the injection that you receive that has a cocktail of chemicals to prevent certain forms of illness, we'll just call it a Vixen.
Nice.
Yeah.
There you go, the Vixen. So, and the other thing is Cerveza, right?
Cerveza, that's right. So Cerveza instead of the thing that goes in your head.
Right.
Anyway, so we're going to start by going over certain stories, and we'll just analyze the story as we go along. I'll take a few, Jim will take a few, we'll talk about it, and it'll just be a good all-around conversation. And because it's a much more relaxed setting, as we talk, if you have something that you want to talk about or something that you'd like for me to share, or you have a question, go ahead and put it in the comments box and we will go ahead and post it and we'll talk about it and we'll go from there. Witch's Brew, I like that one. All right. So the first story that we have, the beer bug. Nice. I love that one. That one's really creative.
Nice.
All right.
The beer bug.
The beer bug. The bug.
Right. The bug.
All right. So the first story that we have going on, the Satanic Temple has filed a lawsuit in the United States District Court of the Southern District of Texas, Houston Division, alleging that certain state-mandated abortion restrictions violate the Satanic Temple's members' religious beliefs. Now, one might ask how a restriction on abortion would restrict their religious beliefs. It says, on behalf of the Satanic Temple, Ann Doe, TST is suing the state of Texas for imposing medically unnecessary abortion regulations, including a sonogram, a forced decision to reject the opportunity of seeing the sonogram results, the forced listening to a narrative of the sonogram results, and a mandatory waiting period between the sonogram and the abortion. Now, these are rather old restrictions. They've been around for quite some time. In fact, Texas, I believe, just signed a bill, or they passed a bill to ban just about all abortions in the state. So this is kind of an interesting development. It goes on. It says, Doe performed the Satanic Temple's abortion ritual. Let that sink in for just a minute.
Right.
Jim, what do you think an abortion ritual is?
That sounds like a religious service to me.
It sounds like human sacrifice.
Yes. Yeah, murder, but human sacrifice, right? Right.
Because if there's a ritual, so we don't have, like, I'm pretty sure that the Satanic Temple doesn't have, say, tumor removal ritual.
No.
I'll bet
so.
they don't have root canal ritual.
Nope.
So there's something inherent to the act of abortion, which itself is ritualistic according to the Satanic practices. Now, what they argue is this. They say that prior to filing the lawsuit, the Satanic Temple's attorney sent a letter to the Texas Health and Human Services Commission, which demanded an exemption from the abortion restrictions on behalf of Ann Doe. The Satanic Temple's attorney explained, the abortion ritual, 1, requires an abortion. 2, affirms her religious subscription to the Satanic Temple's 3rd and 5th tenets. Now, it doesn't actually say what the 3rd and 5th tenets are. I haven't looked, so I can't really say right off the top of my head, but it would probably seem to be something surrounding human sacrifice. But before Ms. Doe can get her abortion and therefore participate in the abortion ritual, the government has required that she get a sonogram. These requirements substantially interfere with Ms. Doe's religious beliefs and practices for 2 reasons. First, the requirements are a precondition to Ms. Doe's ability to participate in a religious ceremony. It is a substantial interference per se for the state to place a regulatory hurdle, one that costs money, in front of a religious exercise. The state might as well tax and regulate mass, they said. Now, I don't need to go into the rest of this. I mean, it's pretty much the same. It just says exactly what we just read. But what I want to point out is that this is one of the primary reasons why, when I was in college, I argued vociferously against the idea of religious liberty. Now, one thing that needs to be remembered is that the idea of religious liberty was something that was born out of the Enlightenment. It was brought to the front by the French Revolution, where they had edicts of religious liberty, and it was condemned by the church. The church condemned the idea of religious liberty. That got reversed, or apparently reversed, at the Second Vatican Council with the decree on religious freedom, whereby it indicated that everybody has a right to practice their religious beliefs, blah, 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 blah. Except that the church, arguing against this in stating that religious liberty is something that is to be condemned, argued that evil has no rights. So a false religion has no right to exist. One thing that I want to point out is that during the Reconquista in Spain, Queen Isabella of Spain they finally kicked out all of the Muslims. Well, they at least stopped the Muslim incursion, took over all the territories. It doesn't mean the Muslims left. There were a lot of Muslims still there. There were a lot of Jews still there. And the Muslims and the Jews were allowed to practice their religious beliefs. Now, there's a modern misconception about the Inquisition that Queen Isabella of Spain had instituted the Inquisition in order to kick out all the Muslims and Jews, so that there were no Muslims and Jews anywhere in Spain, and anybody who remained behind, they were grilled and they were, just horribly tortured until they either admitted that they were in fact a Muslim or Jew or a heretic of some kind, and then either forced to convert or die. That was not the case. That's not what the Spanish Inquisition was. The Spanish Inquisition had to do with what were called conversos. The law on the books in Spain was that only baptized Christians could hold public office. So you couldn't be a governor, you couldn't be a proconsul, you couldn't be a judge unless you were a Christian, because Spain is a Christian nation. We are a Christian nation. We are ruled by Christians. We are judged by Christians. Makes perfect sense. However, there were those who were Muslim or who were Jewish who decided that they would pretend to be Christian in order to obtain public office while secretly maintaining their false religious beliefs. And that's what the Inquisition was all about. These individuals wanted the privileges of Christianity, but not the obligation of true conversion. So the Inquisition was all about trying to figure out who these false conversos were so that they were not in positions of public office. But the practice of Islam still took place in Spain. The practice of Judaism still took place in Spain. And it was tolerated. It was tolerated by the Spanish government, but it was never permitted actively as if they had a right to do these things, because they don't. So the church has always taught that religious freedom, religious liberty, this idea of religious liberty, religious freedom, that people have a right to practice a false religion. This idea has always been condemned. Always been condemned until the 1960s. Well, when I was in college, I used to argue with my fellow classmates because they were, everybody had all this fervor for the Second Vatican Council for whatever reason. I never really liked the documents to begin with because I found them to be self-contradicting, and I like things to be succinct and approachable.
Weaponized ambiguity?
Yeah, weaponized ambiguity, absolutely. So I had all these arguments with them, and finally at one point I said, look, here's the problem with religious liberty. Suppose a group of Satanists, and I was saying this back in the 90s, I said, suppose a group of Satanists got together and said, hey, abortion is a sacrament for us. And if you say that abortion is illegal, you are denying us our religious liberty. The consistent response that I got back from these fellow students, these fellow classmates of mine, was, oh, that's ridiculous. That'll never happen. Really?
Guess what?
It's happening now. Hasn't even been 25 years.
Wow.
So, little food for thought there. In any event, this is what's going on in Texas. This satanic temple is suing the state of Texas in order to maintain their right to perform human sacrifice. So let that just sink in for a little bit. Jim is going to talk to us now about Canon 915 and abortion. Sure. So another topic on abortion.
You bet. I wanted to add one more thing to your thing on Spain. For those of you who don't know, I actually hiked the Camino de Santiago, and the kind of an interesting point. So you start out in the French Pyrenees and you literally walk entirely across Spain. I think it's the second oldest pilgrimage, and it ends up in Santiago de Compostela. Anyway, as you're walking across Spain, I got to know Spain pretty well because I walked it. I noticed there were hams everywhere. There were hams in every window, and every restaurant had a ham hanging in the window. And I spoke to, you meet a lot of cool people on the Camino de Santiago. And what they did was, it's exactly like Hitch was saying. It was because they put up with other religions, but Spain was a Catholic country. And so if you were in any sort of food delivery, restaurant, anything like that, first thing you saw right in the window was a ham. So, and that's why they're everywhere. And I mean, it was just something that was really noticeable. So anyway, for what that's worth.
Before you jump in,
Yes.
Mir the Cat asks a question. She said, what is your source, Michael, for the conversos, et cetera? It makes sense. Dr. Warren Carroll, in writing about the building of Christendom, actually addressed the story of the conversos and the Reconquista of Spain. Warren Carroll wrote a lot, specifically about Queen Isabella, to whom he actually had a real devotion. He believed that she is a saint, and she quite honestly probably was. But he had a very strong devotion to her, and it was his writings about the Inquisition from where I got most of my information on that.
All right. So on to Canon 915 and abortion. Anyway, if you're like me, a lot of you for the past couple of decades have looked sort of curiously at this and at this sort of issue with politicians. And I think, Hitch, maybe it's fair to say it started with the Kennedys. With effectively, I'm personally opposed to it, but right, is that fair?
Yeah.
They get, what was it? Priest name's Drinan or something?
Oh yeah, Father Drinan.
Father Drinan, right. So
Drinan was the one. Yeah.
So and as we all know, and especially as of late, and with our faith, there are absolute truths in the world, and sucking a child out of a womb is murder. Call me crazy. So the thing is that there are 2 points about tonight's story. So more and more bishops are actually speaking up now in support of Canon 915, and I can't quote it verbatim, but basically anyone in, I believe the term is grave and manifest sin publicly, basically, Hitch. That's about it. So
public, grave, manifest sin.
Right.
Just to jump in real quick.
Sure,
one
please.
of the arguments that is made about why communion should not be denied to pro-abortion politicians is, and Tim Kaine made this argument recently in his stupid article in the National Catholic Reporter. He said, well, Jesus gave communion to Judas.
Oh boy.
Well,
that's
let me tell
brilliant.
you something. Jesus, ever conscious of making sure that the integrity of the person's good name remains intact, did not reveal Judas's sin. Remember, during the narrative, when Judas and everybody else, they asked, "Is it I, Lord? Is it I who's going to betray you?" And Judas said, "Is it I, Rabbi?" And Jesus said, "It is he who will dip his hands in the hyssop with me. He is the one who is going to betray me." And it was Judas then who dipped his hands. But even still then, the apostles, they were clueless. And so Judas gets up and he leaves. Jesus says to him, "What you do quickly."
Right.
And he goes out, and it was night. Those are the words from Scripture. What St. John adds to this is, we thought that he was going out to give alms to poor because he was the one who held the purse. So they had no idea what Judas's sin was, or even that he was a horrible sinner, which is why Jesus did not deny him Holy Communion. And that's also why the precept of the church is that we only deny communion to those who are public notorious sinners.
Right. Wow. So that's a great point. But as more U.S. bishops are kind of like, I'll call it waking up, because effectively they got Trump out, so now they feel they can say some things. They're citing, more and more bishops are citing Canon 915, and directs clergy deny communion to those who persist in this, what we just discussed, right? LA's Archbishop Jose Gomez, head of the U.S. Bishops Conference, sent a letter to the Vatican. Said Archbishop Gomez, first and most important thing is that we're all children of God. Okay, great. Gomez explained that the bishop's plan was this is where here we go again. The bishop's plan is to draft a document in June responding to the widespread problem with the United Front. So Friday, there was a response from a Cardinal Luis Ladaria, head of the Vatican Doctrinal Office, reportedly warning Gomez to slow down and engage in more dialogue. Okay.
Because the issue hasn't been talked to death.
This is where like a lot of us here, I'm sure a lot of you want to go over to the closet, open the door, and bang your head. Okay, there is no dialogue with this. What is there to discuss? This is grave and manifest sin. One attorney involved in this said, he had a beautiful quote: "They are eating and drinking their own condemnation, and their eternal soul is in peril." I'm not sure that's registering with them.
Yeah.
And it's a great point. This problem has been around for decades, and none of us understand why. This is since the likes of, as I mentioned, it started with Ted Kennedy, then it was Mario Cuomo. Now it's, the Patrick Leahys, the Pelosi's, the Kerrys, the Andrew Cuomos. It's crazy. And now you have the president of the United States, who is the chief baby murderer.
Yep.
And, Biden, quote, "It is not a position I found anywhere else, including from the Holy Father, who gives me communion." This is just absolutely nonsense. And again, this is the enraging part, because very few have spoken up about this, and it is so obvious. From what I figured here, the ones that have actually spoken up are Gomez said something, Salvador Corleone, Archbishop Charles Chaput, Archbishop Joseph Naumann, and Thomas Olmsted. Yep. I mean, for the past 45 years, right, we'll call it that, the bishops have absolutely been, they've been absent on this issue. They've ignored it, and they've allowed this grave scandal to continue. And I would argue that it's even worse than that, because when Bernardine came up with his diabolical seamless garment theory, and this is like, if it wasn't so evil, you'd be impressed at the genius of it. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so, and the genius was in the language. So effectively, we care so much about the whole man. We care about his job, his children, not just abortion. Mm-hmm. We have to care about the whole man. And effectively, what this comes down to is that the bishops, and there's no way to put this, are guilty of ignoring institutional murder, and it's been on their watch, and they have not said a word. I think it's obvious to anyone who's paying attention. There are other reasons for it, but a big part of it, I mean, it's multivariable. A big part of it is the United States government is their benefactor.
Yeah. And here's the other thing. One thing that we have to keep in mind is that in 2004, this whole question was settled.
Yeah.
It was completely and totally settled.
Absolutely.
Because
several times since then, and Benedict settled it.
Yeah, well, and that's what happened. So in 2004, when Pope Benedict was actually Cardinal Ratzinger, and
head of doctrine of the prefect of the doctrine of the faith, right?
So while he was there, he wound up writing a letter to Archbishop Wilton Gregory, who was the head of the USCCB at the time, and to Cardinal McCarrick, who was the prefect or the head of the Diocese of Washington, D.C., which is why the letter went to the two of them. Those two conspired to hide the letter so that the U.S. bishops never saw it. And what they did is they lied directly to the bishops of the United States and said, well, Cardinal Ratzinger said that it's up to each individual bishop's own consciences as to whether they're going to deny Holy Communion to such a politician or not.
That's exactly correct. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, even though Ratzinger said in the letter that such politicians must be denied Holy Communion.
This is where you get me, though. This is where I never understood how the Vatican operates. This is where I go, okay, because everything you said is not conjecture, not conspiracy. This is true. Everything you said is true. Why don't you send your henchmen over like they did to Father Kalchak? And relieve these guys from office. You know what I'm saying, kind of?
Well, of course. So this is what drives me nuts about our side of the whole equation. The bad guys, they play for keeps. Mm-hmm. We bring feather dusters to a gunfight.
Yes, Marcus of Queensberry rules. And these guys are pulling out daggers.
Yes. And I mean, going back to the whole thing about about the dialogue, right? So... well, what we need is more dialogue. We have to talk about this more. I mean, what they're basically saying to these politicians is, you better get in line and you'd better listen to me. And we need to talk about this, because if you don't, we're going to have to talk about it again. I mean, how stupid and ridiculous is that? You do that to a kid, and what's the kid going to do?
Can't listen. Yeah. Right.
No, I have children. I have 7 children, and my children listen to me. Do you know why? Because they know the consequences of what happens if they don't.
Oh, you mean you say something and you mean it?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Oh
so,
yeah.
so that works.
Yeah, it's called
Huh.
follow through.
No
Uh,
kidding.
So it's a unique concept. I'm patenting the idea. So
Is that in your
it's
book?
I'm going to be writing a book, and I'll be going on tour sometime next year to promote this new novel idea
Right.
called Spanking.
Uh-huh.
But the fact of the matter is, this whole dialogue nonsense has gotten so bad that nobody gives a flip what these
Nope.
bishops say at all.
Not at all.
They've talked themselves out of any kind of position of authority whatsoever. I
And
mean,
as Father Altman says, 10,000 children are being murdered in the United States every Saturday.
right.
That's their big day. And after a while, you just go, guys, are you kidding me?
You know what's
Go ahead.
interesting about that?
What?
That Saturday is their big day for abortion. What day was it that Our Lady asked for masses of reparation? Saturday.
Oh, first Saturday.
Yeah. So why Saturday?
Wow, that's interesting. I never thought of
Yeah.
that. That is, wow. Yeah, it's just what an infuriating story. I've just been thinking about this for years. It's been going on for, and you just go, guys, they're just, it's not even, it's way past weak. They're, look, I have to assign motive here. Come on.
Oh, sure.
I mean, give me a break.
Yep.
Anyway,
Yep.
that's all I got on that story. Everyone knows the rest, but
Right.
boy, go
Well,
ahead.
we'll follow that one up with some good news.
Yeah.
So the headline here is Men's March Against Abortion First Ever. This comes out of LifeSite News, and it reads just like this. On June 12th in Washington, D.C., Father Stephen Imbarrato and Catholic radio host Jim Havens are organizing the first ever National Men's March to defend life and end abortion. This is a quote from Father Imbarrato. All men are called to spiritual fatherhood. Not all are called to become priests, but to be fatherly, Father Imbarrato told LifeSite News. They are called to be protectors of women, to be protectors of children, to be mentors, to be wise men. We want to draw attention that we are not going to tolerate the daily mass murder, government protected, government sanctioned, government funded, of preborn children, emphasized Imbarrato. Now, this particular march, which again takes place on June the 12th, it'll be up in Washington, D.C. If you want to participate, or you want to, how come it's not letting me? There we go. Copy hyperlink. I'm going to put this in the show, in the chat box here. So you can actually go to this website, themensmarch.com. You can sign up to participate, and I highly recommend that you do, and please share it with everybody. The Lepanto Institute is an official sponsor of the Men's March. I've been asked to speak, and my response was, well, let me check my calendar, because I've got a lot coming up in June, but I think I'm going to be able to do it. So I'll let Mr. Jim Havens know here very soon if I can do it. But I think that this is a very important thing. Now, one thing in particular, and this is really cool. There's a dress code for the Men's March.
Yeah.
So you're not going to get those nasty pink hats like at the Women's March. No, men must wear suits, and priests are to wear clerics. So there's not going to be any other banners. There's not going to be any signage, just suits marching up in DC right in front of an abortuary. And then we're going to be praying, and we'll be giving speeches and that kind of thing. So it's a fantastic opportunity for us to put real and true masculinity on display and say, hey, men have got to step up. Men have got to stand up and actually grab the bull by the horns and show, no, we're not going to stand for the murder of our children, the murder of and the violation of our women. That's what emasculated men do. Even eunuchs will defend virgins.
Right.
So the men who don't do this kind of thing, they're not even eunuchs.
let me jump in, Hitch. I got to say, I love it. I found the article, and I went, and by the way, you didn't even tell me that Lepanto was. I'm reading this article. I can't wait to send it to you. And all of a sudden, I get to the end. I go, Lepanto, thanks, buddy. Thanks for the heads up. But I'm like, I guess you already know this then. But the point to what you were saying is, I think this is such a beautiful thing. And honestly, and the part I love is one sign. There will be one sign, and the men that will be there will be dressed in coat and tie, and they will be acting respectfully. And I am calling every guy I know, and I will be there. And I can't wait. And I just think that men have to stand up on this issue, because behind every abortion is some guy. And until we take that seriously and fight for these kids, I just think the issue itself is such a litmus test to Western civilization. You know, the way this has been hijacked, it makes me so incredibly sad, and it is so tragic. And we've got to stand up. And I love the fact that they're doing it in quite literally a gentlemanly manner. And yeah, I'll be there, man. I got 2 buddies I talked into, and I had to bribe them, but tough. We'll get them there.
Excellent. All right.
But I'll buy the steaks. Just get in the car.
So why don't you take us on to the next story then?
Oh, you got it, man. Let's see. Now we are on the. Are we on the Eco Reset Forum, Hitch?
No, this one is the shot heard around the world one.
Oh, hang on a second. Oh yeah, this is great. Stay with me. Sorry about this.
More good news.
Yeah, more good news. Hold on. Stay with me. Okay. So our good friend Dr. X, who you can't see on YouTube anymore and have to see on Rumble, sent me this the other day. And I thought it was brilliant. I'll just read from it. So within the last few days, an employee of Target went to work, and she was sick and tired of having her rights trampled upon. She refused to wear her mask as directed by her employer. Right? She informed her manager, this is great. She informed her manager that she would not comply with this directive to wear the mask, that there was no scientific basis for the rule, and that there was no legal authority which would allow him to enforce it. Just let that kind of like sink in. Wow, imagine that. Somebody did their homework. Now, this I have to give it to this employee even further, because before she did that, she contacted America's Frontline Docs and their legal team. And specifically, they got an attorney a guy by the name of Tom Rentz, who AFLDS, the America's Frontline, had retained his services. And apparently, the good attorney, Dr. Rentz, has quite a reputation, because the Target manager directed the woman in question that day to go home. And she was advised that she was being terminated. Within 24 hours, she was contacted at home and called back to work. The mask requirement was dropped. And so Tom Rentz was very fully cognizant of the law, hit him with about, as only lawyers can do, about 85 bullet points about what he was about to do and the checkbook that he had behind him, and they acquiesced. Now, within the last few days, so this went on, and the employee so the legal team was actually picking up this, the entire tab for this. Now, also the same organization, and this is great, America's Frontline Doctors, are now suing the United States Department of Health and Human Services. They're intending to sue, but first they got a restraining order to stop the vaccine on children.
Boom.
Boom. Right? It was like, and in the suit, they point out that children have almost 0% chance of dying or even getting sort of any sort of symptoms from this. Yep. They said it's insane. And so what I think, Hitch, weigh in on this if you think, but what's interesting is, and I really feel it all around, is after a year of this nonsense, people have had it. Yes. But I really have to hand it to this woman, because she just didn't go off on the guy. She did her homework. Yep. She was prepared. And if there's one takeaway from this entire story, you have got to be prepared, because the left has a lot of energy and they're very, very evil. And they don't care about anything other than power. And so her deal, she had this thing set up and played it like a Stradivarius. She went short. No, there's no. She laid it out, was very clear with the guy, and then and I'll tell you just from my own experience, and I'm seeing people do this. I've been doing this for a year, and I'm not just saying that to be some sort of tough guy. I have been fighting for a year because this whole thing is stupid.
Yeah.
I mean, you put this thing on and you spray perfume. If you can smell that perfume, it doesn't work. End of story. Because that perfume, Adam, is like, I think 100 times bigger than the other one. So, the one that we can't name because we'll get in trouble.
Right.
The Cerveza one, right?
Mhm.
So don't go against Big Brother. But the real takeaway here is this woman really did her homework. She set this thing up and Target folded like a cheap suit. Way to go, lady.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that story, man. This
Yeah.
made my day. I was like, anything else there? Hold on. Director with 24 hours back test. Oh, yeah. And the entire massacre warrant was dropped. And then apparently a whole bunch of other employees kind of followed suit. And so there's a tsunami of bad children employees that who need to be very, very bad children who are thinking for themselves and not drinking the Kool-Aid. And so finally it's happening. Good Lord.
Oh,
So
I know.
anyway, that's all I got on the Target story, I believe, sir.
Yeah, well, it's interesting the way that they are approaching this whole thing by saying enough is enough. Let's go ahead and sue an employer for trying to force the vaccine on us.
Yes.
And I saw, what was it, just earlier this week, OSHA, I can't remember what it stands for, but
Occupational
OSHA,
safety and whatever nonsense
right.
Right.
OSHA actually put out a memo saying, so you employers who are mandating vaccines, you might be liable for workers' comp if people are damaged.
Yeah, I did see that. I forgot about that. So
Yeah.
basically they're saying you could be liable and, for this experimental thing that they want to inject in your body.
So here's something else, and this kind of goes along with it, is that there were a couple of bishops that came out and said they're going to mandate that all employees, anyone distributing communion, which includes the priest, will be mandated to get vaccinated. Now, one of the bishops was Archbishop Wester, who is the AUSCP's liaison to the USCCP. The AUSCP is that heretical association of United States Catholic priests. And the other is Bishop Kettler.
You're going to that one too, aren't you?
Yeah. We're not talking about that.
Oh, sorry. Yikes.
No, that's okay. It's okay. This is the inner circle. So
that's right.
we can kind of wink and nod about that one for a little bit. But the other bishop was Bishop Kettler out in St. Cloud, Minnesota. And they both put out these statements saying that their priests, anybody distributing communion, anybody who's participating in diocesan events, any volunteers, they all have to get vaccinated. Otherwise, they're not allowed. So I'm putting this out there because if there are any priests from either of those dioceses who are listening this evening, or any parishioners of either of those dioceses who are listening this evening, and they know of priests or other employees who may or may not want to actually follow through and receive that horrid vixen, they can go ahead and take a look at the OSHA, the OSHA statement about how employers might be on the hook for adverse vaccine reactions. Vixen reactions.
Vixen reactions, right?
Vixen reactions.
Vixen reactions. Okay.
So it's a way of pushing back and saying, okay, Your Excellency, just so that you know, if I am damaged by this, you are on the hook for as long as I am damaged, which could very well be the rest of my life.
Right. Can I jump in on this? Is one thing, Hitch. This is one thing that I really troubles me again. Most of these vaccines are made from aborted fetuses, correct? Most of them. I'm 70% or something.
It depends on which.
Johnson & Johnson is.
Johnson & Johnson.
Moderna is not, I believe, right? Pfizer is.
Yep.
Right. So I think there's, last count, I think there's 7 or 8 of them. And I think 5 of them or something are aborted fetuses, something like that. Is that close? Give or take? More than half. It's more than half, right?
I'm not looking at my documents, so I don't know right off which ones are and which ones aren't. But the thing is that even the ones that are not, that do not include aborted fetal tissue, they're tested on them.
Yes, thank you.
And so you have the moral problem of saying, well, you're still participating in the grave moral evil of abortion by having the testing on aborted fetal tissue, which is perpetuating the entire problem. So it's again, it's one of those things. I really liked what Archbishop Athanasius Schneider, or Bishop Athanasius Schneider said a couple of weeks ago when he was talking about this very issue at the Truth Over Fear conference.
Yep.
And what he said, he drew the analogy. He said, imagine that the person that they were testing this material on, this vaccine on, was the body of a dead beloved of a family member, a beloved family member who'd been murdered.
Yes.
So you have a family member who's been murdered,
Great
and
point.
they take that family member's body and they start doing medical testing on him. You know, if that's something that would infuriate you on a personal level, multiply that for God, who is witnessing this going on a regular basis.
Great point.
Because that person is more beloved of God than any other human person alive.
Yes.
And that person had a real soul. Their body had the real image and likeness of God. So you're actually doing this testing, this medical testing on tissue that held the Imago Dei. So you take that idea, you extend it just a little bit, and you say, you know, there's just something not right here. There's something viscerally wrong
Yes.
with what they're doing. And how can you go ahead and participate in that? They can talk about remote moral cooperation all they want, but all they're doing is splitting hairs about a truth. And the truth is that they are testing a shot, an injection on the tissue of somebody who was murdered.
That's right. Can I add some more, call it irony to this? On Tuesday in Dallas at noon, the Cathedral of the Diocese of Guadalupe, they're having a special mass for George Floyd, of which they're going to light one candle every minute for 9 minutes to represent the time the police officer's knee was on George Floyd's neck. Now, compare that, I believe the same diocese, to calling the cops on the pregnant woman who took her mask off because she was nauseous with a 2-year-old and pregnant, and had basically police officers came in and very rudely threatened to eject her in handcuffs. This is the world. This is the world we're living in with these guys.
Well,
so they're going to make their priests take this vaccine from aborted fetuses. They're going to have this mask. I mean, this is crazy. Go ahead. Sorry.
Right. Well, let's tie this into what's going on with the Canon 915 stuff.
Yeah. Right.
You know? Because what's happening, you have
exactly.
They're playing fast and loose with the rules, these bishops. And they're doing it in a way that ruins souls. And this all falls into what I said in my newsletter this evening. If you haven't read it yet,
it was very good.
I highly encourage you to read it, because I talk about how Voltaire had spoken specifically about how priests should not be allowed to withhold communion from sinners, from public sinners, because we're all sinners, right? We're all sinners, and none of us is worthy. So you have an unworthy priest distributing communion to an unworthy soul, and so there's nobody should be denying communion to anybody else. Also, Voltaire very directly told somebody that if they wanted to murder their conscience, they should receive Holy Communion while in a state of mortal sin.
Yes,
by
on
the way,
purpose.
it worked. Yeah.
Yeah, on purpose, right?
Right.
Consciously to do that.
So at the end of the day, now, Voltaire, he tried to be an atheist. He really tried, but he wasn't.
Like, God gave him a reprieve, didn't he?
No, well, yeah, sort of.
No, I mean, like, didn't he actually? He was actually for a brief time converted.
Yeah, because he was dying, and
right, that was it. Yeah, no atheists in foxholes hitch. Sorry,
yeah, right.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and so what happened? So the first time when he was dying, he said, "Okay, I want all my books pulled, and I want I want to sign a document that says I'm in good with the church. I want a priest to come and hear my confession. I want to be absolved. I want to be in line with the church because I'm afraid of going to hell, right? Well, then what happens is it alerts all of his Masonic brothers who say, yeah, we're not going to let that happen again.
Right.
And so he has a stroke and he's lying on his deathbed. I think it took him about a month to die. So he's lying on his deathbed and these Masons are standing at the door and they're making absolute certain that a priest does not come to hear his absolution or to hear his confession. So they are sitting there at watch to make sure that Voltaire is not able to recant. He's not able to pull his books and he's not able to have a good confession before he dies. Voltaire, at the end of his life, believed, because in part of the description of his death, he actually saw the devil and he saw hell. He saw his place in it as he was dying. He knew what he was receiving. He also knew what other people were receiving. But these bishops, I don't think they actually believe.
No,
I don't think they actually believe in the true presence of Christ in the Eucharist.
I agree with you.
How could they?
Nope. I can't answer that. I don't think they have supernatural faith. I don't.
Yeah.
Although it said, Hitch, you got to put this up because I think it has to be the comment of the day.
Oh, okay.
Ready? I think your call, but Holy Redeemer Eldorado 737. I identify as a vaccinated person.
Let me see.
I think that's perfect. I identify as a vaccinated person.
Let me see. Oh, there it is.
I think that's hilarious.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. If we can deny our biological realities and go ahead and start participating in a fantasy and demand that other people play along with our fantasies, then why not?
Well, exactly.
I like the idea. Somebody said that just slap a Band-Aid on your shoulder.
Yeah.
Who's going to ask?
Who's going to ask? I think incredible. Where are we at now? I think you're up, right?
Anyway, we are on to the next story.
I believe it's the Vatican hosts U.S. government officials.
The head. There we go. I'm back. Okay. Vatican hosts influential U.S. government officials at Eco Reset Forum.
Yes.
The article says this: the Vatican hosted a closed-door conference Friday with top officials from the Biden administration, finance ministers, left-wing economists, and heads of the World Bank, the African Union, the Rockefeller Foundation, and the International Monetary Fund. Think about that for just a second. It was a closed-door conference.
Right.
Why was it closed doors? The church is talking about, trying to make sure that we have transparency, and the church is all about trying to make sure that we are putting forward the truth and everything that's good and holy and beautiful, and we want everybody to have dialogue. Well, why is this dialogue being cut off from the rest of us? That's what I want to know. Goes on. On Thursday, and this was last week, by the way, or no, this week? Was that yesterday? Yeah, maybe it was yesterday. On Thursday, the pontiff received Argentina's finance minister, Martin Guzman, to the Vatican as part of a pro-abortion Argentinian President Alberto Fernandez entourage. Guzman, who is a delegate at Friday's summit, is held in high esteem by Pope Francis Joseph Stiglitz, a close ideological ally of the pontiff. Stiglitz served as chairman of the U.S. President Bill Clinton's Council on Economic Advisors, campaigned for the Democrats in the 2020 presidential election, smearing America as, quote, the country with the least equality of opportunity. It also had Jeffrey Sachs, whom we all know. He's a regular visitor at the Vatican and of the current pontificate.
There's a room there.
Yeah. Well, he's got a office.
Really?
I'm told he actually has an office in the Vatican.
I can see that. Sure.
Yeah. The Rockefeller Foundation was there, and they have a long suspect history. The foundation supported the racist pseudoscience eugenics of the Nazis, and later founded America's two most important sexual revolutionaries, Dr. Alfred Kinsey, who is the father of modern sex education, and Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood. So the Rockefellers are absolutely horrible, notorious people. And of course, this is what's ironic, right? Pope Francis goes on and on and on about how capitalism is bad and capitalism is wrong and having money is bad.
Right.
Oh, but you Rockefellers, you can come and let's commiserate, right?
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
Time out.
The inconsistencies. It reminds me of the circular reasoning, the bad argumentation, and the contradictions that were made by Jesus's accusers during the Passion. They all contradicted themselves, and these people do too, consistently. So what did they talk about? They talked about climate change and wealth redistribution. So is Rockefeller going to be redistributing wealth to the rest of us? Kind of don't think so. I get the feeling that he's going to be redistributing wealth to, say, the Democratic campaigns. Yes. Oh, and probably Dominion voting machines and China.
I have such a dark economic take on this. So do me a favor, Hitch. Whenever you want me to just like unleash me, let me go and then just finish up. I don't mean to interrupt your point.
Yeah, sure. No, okay. I'll circle back.
Yeah, thank you. That's what I was. You and Jen. Circle back, Jen.
Yeah. A brochure in the conference published a summary of the talk on climate change and sustainable fair energy and food system transformation by German economist and president of the PAS, which is the Pontifical Academy for Science, Joachim von Braun. I wonder if he's related to Werner von Braun. Underscoring the urgency to stop climate action, or of stronger climate action, von Braun warned of the impacts of climate change and emphasized the need to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Well, tell you what, if they can actually make the global temperature remain at a constant 65 degrees, I don't have any problem. Actually, I will help them.
Yeah.
Because honestly, I hate summer. So,
and mosquitoes, get that.
Yes, and mosquitoes. 65 degrees, that would eliminate the skeeter problem too. So let's do it.
I'm so on board with this.
Yeah. Wait, where's Bill Gates to put all that dust in the air?
Yeah.
Right, we'll all be dead, but at least we'll be comfortable.
Exactly right. Well, that's what matters.
Italian economist Stefano Zamangi, president of PASS, which is the Pontifical Academy of Social Sciences, alerted the delegates to the largest wave of simultaneous debt reductions in history over the next 3 years. Let's see. Debt reduction plus stimulus package does what, Jim?
I can go, right?
Yeah, go ahead.
So if I made just a slight correction, I think it said restructuring. Take another look.
Oh, restructurings. You're right. Debt restructurings.
Same thing, actually, but there's a point I'm going on here. And that's why I just wanted to make the distinction. It's not far off. And so here's what we're talking about here. We have this guy, Zamangi, president of the past, right, alerted delegates to the largest wave of simultaneous debt restructuring in history over the next 3 years. Now, in the worst economic disaster in the United States, I'm going to call that the Great Depression, and coming out of World War II, we had to do deficit spending. The highest percent of GDP that we have gone into debt for was no greater than 10%. Normally, okay, that's even in World War II, right? Because then, and it was interesting because due to bad government policy, the reason it's kind of not an entirely accurate number, due to bad government policy, actually, because of World War II, the economy actually grew. So it would have been a much higher number, but I digress. Now, what's the point of all this? So essentially, between now we're at 30%. We have, with the stimulus package, the multi-trillion-dollar stimulus package, we now have a deficit of 30%, never seen before. Now add to that what that guy just said. So you're talking about restructuring debt with all of these nations, and everyone's on board. And I'd like to add a third thing too. The IMF has a special purpose vehicle, which effectively created out of thin air another $1 trillion. That they're just, because what they're doing is it's a fiat lending system based on all the currencies of the G7 nations that really no one has to account for. This is absolutely insane. There are two things going on here, and I'll just boil it down. The first one is, this is, if anyone doesn't believe it, this is absolutely 100% inflationary. This is beyond inflationary. Been to the grocery store lately? You ain't seen nothing yet, right? It's getting that way.
Yep.
And the other thing is, it's the Great Reset. Why? And I don't care what anyone says, I am putting my money on this, right? What do I mean by that? Because they have all these other countries, these second and third world countries that are now beholden to our debt. We've done a pretty good job of chewing our economy up. We have, and I'll point as evidence the Paris Climate Accord, where China and India are beholden to absolutely nothing. And we effectively, as you pointed out, we did a few weeks ago with the Biden-Kennedy thing, we effectively have an administration that has purposely shot ourselves.
Yep.
Okay. So, and what's going to come out of this, and listen, I'll bet the farm on this. Number one is you cannot, I got to explain this because this is fascinating. It's called the new monetary, it's called modern economic policy. This is great. The reason we're not going to have inflation, it's going to get boring for 1 minute, but it's so worth me telling you this. Okay. On the short end of the curve, that's the Federal Reserve. Okay. So if you're going to borrow money 1 to 6 months or 1 to a year, the Federal Reserve sets that rate, and that's at 0. Okay. Because they're trying to stimulate the economy, stimulate growth, right? Makes sense?
Right.
Longer end of the curve, 10-year debt, 30-year debt, the market determines that rate. Got it? But here's the catch, Hitch. They have this thing called quantitative easing. So if interest rates rise, and sorry, again, boring you to tears, price and yield move inversely. Price goes up, yield goes down. Yield goes down, price goes up. That's for another class. They go into the market and they have this thing called quantitative easing. And the Fed has an unlimited balance sheet. I don't know what that is because it makes no sense to me, but effectively they can buy all the 10 years and 30 years they want, thereby driving the yield down. Got it?
Oh, interesting.
Okay, did that make sense? I hope I didn't bore you guys to death.
So what are they buying those 10
so
years, 30 years
with the unlimited balance sheet the Federal Reserve has. Got it? And then they turn around, they sell it to China, and anyone else will buy it. But think about this. And if China decides they want to get out of line, because how does this all work? Because there's a lot of bad people invested in making sure the dollar stays up, most of which the entire oil industry is traded on dollars, petrodollars and all of that.
Right.
So this is effectively, and what I just said was complete and utter nonsense. You think about this, right? So effectively what I just told you was we can print money all day long and there'll be no problem because the Fed says so. And it's called modern economic policy. And if things start getting out of hand, we'll just print a few more trillion and we'll buy the debt to drive down rates on the longer end. This is insane. This is going to end so badly.
Yep.
So stock up on canned goods and bullets. And this has been your cheery report for the day. Thank you, Hitch. I told you I was going to.
You know what led to the downfall of the Roman Empire? Two things:
morality and fake currency or inflation.
They're connected. So the first is that they inflated their currency.
Right.
The emperors started adding tin.
Yes, that's right. As opposed to the actual precious metal that it was made of.
Yep.
That's very good. That's a good historical point.
Yeah, they started adding tin to it. The other thing is that their military started to include women and homosexuals.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Really?
Yep. So those things combined led to Rome getting so weak. Their military force was so weak they couldn't pay the military. This is why several emperors were murdered. Because they couldn't pay the Praetorian Guard, so the Praetorian Guard started murdering them, and then the senators, so one of the reasons why the senators conspired against one of the Roman emperors was that the Roman emperor said, "All you senators bought all these farmlands out in the countryside for pennies on the dollar, and you caused all of the farmers to come into the cities. And so there was a shortage of food, plus an increase of poverty in the cities. And so this emperor said, no, we're going to change things. You senators who illegally purchased all of this land are going to return the land. We're going to send these farmers back out to farm their farms. And the senators had him murdered.
Wow.
Yeah.
Whoa. Whoa. Holy cow.
So take it a step further,
Yeah.
then you start to have the degradation of the military, because the senators didn't want a strong military. Why? Because the emperor controlled the military and they were afraid of the emperor, and they didn't want the emperor using the military against them and taking their lands back, and on and on and on. Ultimately, the military gets really weak. The value of the currency gets really weak, and the Gauls lick their chops and walk right in and say, fine, we'll take it. When they walk in
Right.
to take everything, the emperor was a simpering, sniveling sap,
Right.
and they were
Right.
so disgusted they left. They sacked Rome and said, I don't want this.
That's awesome.
This isn't worth
Really?
taking. Yeah.
Hitch, can I, at 7:58, I really like to answer this question because I think it's a very smart one. Lisa Evers at 7:58 asked, if China calls in our notes, what happens? Right now,
Okay.
a lot of people say that, and again, I'll be brief, but this is a very, very important question. Now, that won't happen, and here's why. Again, this goes back to the structural fraud and the integral fraud as to the entire system. So, what do we have a voracious appetite for? Cheaply made goods. Got it? So we buy their cheaply made goods. Hello, Amazon. That's how it gets here, right? And now, what does China do with the dollars? They recycle them back into U.S. debt, and they buy 10 years and 30-year debt. And that's what they do. It's a symbiotic relationship. Now, last point, the reason they get away with it, because we quietly, and not so, except for Donald Trump, it was against this, we ignore the fact that their currency called the yuan is absolute fiction.
Yep.
And it works. And so, Lisa, I hope that answers your question, but there you go. I was done on that, Hitch, but I think that's a really important one.
Sure. So I'm just going to end this session with a little bit of an analogy. There was a lot of bad news. There was a lot of good news mixed in with it tonight. But if you look around, there's a whole lot of bad news.
Yeah.
And the news only gets worse. And it comes at us so rapid fire now, it's hard for us to keep up. It's hard to keep track of everything because it's kind of like running downhill. If you're running downhill in the middle of the woods, at first it's, a slight jog and things are going kind of quick, but you can make adjustments and you can turn and you can keep from falling or running into a tree. But the faster you go, or the steeper the incline and the faster you go, the faster those trees are whizzing by, the greater the chances of you tripping up and falling and breaking your neck. So it kind of feels like that with how everything is just accelerating. Fulton Sheen said that all things accelerate towards their end. And boy, can we see things accelerating now. But here's the hitch. One of the things, the way that he put the analogy, he said, if you take a ball or a stone and you roll it down a hill, it's going to continue rolling downhill and it's going to pick up speed until it runs into something else. Now, we know that everything is accelerating and that things are picking up speed and everything seems to be rushing toward an end. And because everything is going downhill, we can very easily say that that end looks like hell on earth. But God has a way of putting an obstacle in the way that causes not just a bump, but a chute. You ever play skee ball in the little penny arcades?
Yeah.
You take the skee ball and you roll it up a ramp.
Right. It hits the bullseye.
Well, it goes up the ramp, but then it hits a lip and it pops it up.
Right.
Pops it up real high, and it'll go into different levels of, you can hit the 100 mark or the 10 mark or whatever it is, the little targets. So you have the little balls and they're running towards their target, and it looks like it's going to go into hell. Looks like it's going to go downhill and it's never going to come up. A lot of people look at what's going on in Rome and they say, oh, this is going to be just a horrible situation. We're locked in for disaster for a century at least, because of the way that the Curia has been taken over by all these homosexuals. Or they look at the way the economy is falling in the United States. We'll never recover from this. It's horrible. It's terrible. And they're not wrong. Things are pretty bad. But again, God has a way of causing miraculous reversals. He puts just that one little obstacle in the way of the ball that pops it up. And that little pop is what takes it over the edge and puts it into the 100-point bullseye. And we have to recognize that Our Lady promised that in the end, her Immaculate Heart will triumph. We're going to go down pretty far. We're going to go down and it's going to get scary. We're going to suffer, and things are going to look like they're accelerating so fast. There's just no way we're going to see our way up. But Our Lady knows the way up, and she knows how to get us there. And she will place what is necessary on the trajectory of that ball in order to get it to its target. And that target is the triumph of her Immaculate Heart. And we have to hold on to that. This is why prophecy exists. It doesn't exist in order to scare us. It doesn't exist so that we sit there and wring our hands and go, gosh, looks like we're in this phase of things, or it looks like we're in that phase of things. No. Prophecy exists to give us the hope that we need to get us through the tough times. Our Lord prophesied his death and his resurrection at the same time. He didn't just prophesy his death. He didn't just say, I'm going to die and sayonara.
Yep.
He said, destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will build it back up. He told his apostles, he told his disciples, I am going to leave you for a time. A time will come and you will not see me. And then another time will come and you will see me. They didn't really understand what it meant, but it was that once they started thinking about it during those times, that was what would carry them through. So in these dark times, we have to recognize that there is a prophecy that goes along with these tough times. And that prophecy is what will carry us through in order to get to the target, which is the triumph of Our Lady's Immaculate Heart. We just have to play our part. Wear your scapular, pray the rosary, do the 5 first Saturdays of reparation, and in general, be aware of what's going on in the news, be aware of what's going on in the world, but don't be consumed by it. And that's the whole point.
Don't lose your joy. Someone wrote that.
Yeah, don't lose your joy. You can't. And as somebody else said, Patricia said, trust, hope, and pray. And actually what Padre
Pio, right?
What Padre Pio said was pray, hope, and don't worry.
Oh, right. That's right.
Pray, hope, and don't worry.
Yep.
So that really ought to be our motto, is pray, hope, and don't worry. Because worry does nothing.
Nope.
Yeah. Whereas prayer is doing something. So with that said, why don't we go ahead and close this evening with a prayer?
You got it. Hey, Hitch, one more thing. We're 5 away from 7,000 subscribers. Call your aunt, call your brother. Do me a favor. It's driving me crazy. I'm looking at this every day. We're up 40% in 6 months, and that's because of you guys. It's all organic growth. Yeah. Thank you. God bless. Sorry, Hitch, go.
All right. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Ave Maria, gratia plena, Dominus tecum. Benedicta tu in mulieribus et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Iesus.
Sancta Maria, Mater Dei, ora pro nobis peccatoribus, nunc et ora mortis nostri. Amen.
Our Lady of Victory,
pray for us.
In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. All right, everybody. So I surprised you this week by showing up when I was supposed to be on vacation, but it wasn't that I was supposed to be on vacation. It's that I got the date wrong. I will actually be gone next week because my brother is not my brother. My son is graduate. See how tired I am? My son is graduating from high school. I'm going up to go see his graduation, and then we're all going on a family vacation from there. So Jim will be flying, not solo. He'll have a
surprise guest.
A surprise guest. Yeah, so It'll be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to watching it afterward anyway. So anyway, good night. God bless you. We will see you all, or he will see you all next week, and I will see you all in 2 weeks.
God bless, guys.